Happy Sunday, everybody. It's hashtag Showcase Sunday. And today we have the amazing Susie Stamford from the Breath Code. Susie, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Hi, good morning, and it's a lovely sunny Sunday as well, isn't it? Thank goodness. Right, yes, absolutely. Where I started, I just thought I'd say this because I have had years of experience. When I was 12, my brother had a breakdown, and rather unusually, he was 10 years older than me. My father suggested he goes to do yoga, which we were all quite surprised at, and breath work. So I was introduced to yoga and breath work at the age of 12. So I haven't really forgotten. I mean, I've gone through it all my life, always done yoga, always done breath work, and actually done so many different things, different practices, that it's within me. And I found that it is has a huge impact on our physiology and health. So I've been building a business over the last 25 years, helping people with stress in the corporate sector. And I've seen that the biggest impact is changing the breath. And so now I've sort of expanded that. I rather than doing a lot of it on one-to-one, I'm looking at doing corporate stress management with teams of people and taking each individual, understanding how they're breathing. So it's a very different process than sitting in a room with a mat and taking your breaths. It's actually a very much an everyday change to your breathing. So it's making huge differences to people's lives. So I'm really excited about it.
Amazing. And what makes you unique and different? Because I'm seeing lots of different breathwork coaches popping up now and like you say with yoga, etc. But it is quite interesting. And I've been very blessed to have an experience with you doing some breath work, which has massively helped me, especially if I'm going on stage or if I'm not sleeping very well or if I'm getting ready to go into a global competition, pitching, about using the different techniques. So, what is unique and different about you that nobody else is doing?
Okay, yeah. Well, this technique was based on the Buteyko system, which is back in the early 60s, and it's actually understanding how the body functions. And there are so many things we've missed because when we go off and do breath work, usually sitting taking soft breaths, and people breathe through the nose, through the mouth, do all these different practices. But most of the time, nobody is really aware of how their body is functioning and what they need to do and how they need to get the maximum benefit from the breath that we breathe. Because we do breathe in a lot of oxygen, but the thing is, how much do we actually absorb? And that's the key. Because if we don't absorb enough oxygen, we don't get enough oxygen into our cells. We get it into our body, but it needs to go into the cells because that's where the mitochondria are. And it really impacts your health and well-being. So this is actually looking, not saying, right, here's your breath session, let's all breathe together. This is actually taking an individual and saying, right, how do you breathe? Where do you breathe from? Do you breathe through your nose? Do you breathe through your mouth? Are you just take the big breaths, small breaths? Are you breathing from the stomach? And actually working out, you can do some little tests as well, which are great. One's called the Bolt test, and that's to measure how much you've got oxygen coming in, and you can see how much it's in your blood. But what you need to know is how much are you absorbing. So we do a little test which actually sees what your resistance to CO2 is. And CO2 is like the magic key because the oxygen comes in, it needs to connect with the CO2 before it's released into the cells. So if you're breathing off your CO2 through your mouth, or when we're talking, if you're standing up and doing lots of public speaking, or if, I know a lot of people we're talking to now are in events and management, and that's often a place where you're rushing around, you're probably breathing through your mouth, you're stressed, you're talking to people, so you're not actually absorbing as much oxygen as you could. And this technique takes every individual and shows where they're not breathing properly or correctly, and in fact how we were designed and born to breathe, and actually making those adjustments for that individual so that every day, and it's not torturous every day. Oh God, I've got to go off and do this. It's every day you're walking to get your sandwich. You think, oh, I'll do a few little short breath holds. And that builds up your tolerance to CO2 and you absorb more oxygen. So it's a very, very different approach. It's an everyday functional, this is how you're supposed to breathe. Let's get back to how we do that. And we will get absolutely massive results and changes in our energy levels, focus, ease stress. I've got a little one for you a bit later, which is a quick fix stress, which I know that's needed very much in that environment. So I can give you that as well. So does that kind of give you a bit of an idea of how it's different?
Yeah, it certainly does, because it's the scientific elements behind it which is so important. And like you said, we're not breathing as we should do when we were born, and because of the outside influences or the stress and everything else that's going on around the world. And it's about taking, I have this thing called hashtag TFM, time for me meetings that you put in your diary. And it's really important that people do that for the health and well-being. I know, we can all forget about it very, very quickly, but actually breathing correctly for our health and well-being, because without your health, you won't have any wealth. And it's really important. So what do you do that helps, and it's relevant right now? You've touched on it already, especially in the event space, but any hospitality business right now who has got people who are struggling, stressed out, lack of staff, that's a big thing at the moment. What do you do right now and potentially in the future that can help the hospitality industry, that to help them breathe right, but also deal with difficult situations or stressful situations?
Okay, yeah, I can definitely answer that. Can I just quickly jump back to something you just said
Yeah,
about
of
environment?
course.
I think that's actually really key, because we are from every direction, we're being bombarded. We all know about the emissions in the air. We all know about stuff that we're breathing in all around us. We know about, the foods we eat. There's processed foods, there's lots of sugars, all these kind of things, all in our lifestyle, and it's at us all the time. And when you're busy and rushing around, you can't have the perfect diet. You can't be in beautiful clean air breathing every day, because it's just not going to happen. It's not practical unless you're off on holiday. So this is quite key, because two things have happened because of that. One is the structure of the face has changed over the last 30 or 40 years, because we're not eating and chewing and developing our jaw. So what happens is it's pushing up the shape of the jaw, which means we're getting less air into the nasal passages. So that affects our breathing. And as a result, we're adapting, which we do because humans are incredible. We adapt to all these different things and body learns to cope with it. But what happens is we end up breathing through our mouths most of the time. And that's not good, because that, as I'll perhaps go in a little bit more depth later, but that actually has a huge impact, because that creates low-grade stress in your body 24/7. It affects your sleep. It affects your brain function. It affects energy levels. So it's really important even just to make that small adjustment. And that's an environmental thing. We've adjusted to meet the environment, and that's what's happened. And our jaws have kind of gone back, and we just don't have the capacity anymore. And our mouths have started to drop open, because often, I don't know if anyone listening gets this, but you can get nasal, blockages, and it gets very. Actually, I've got a little exercise you can do on that one, which helps. So I'll maybe give that one to you in a minute, as well as something that could be useful. But I think going back to what you're saying, in the environment where you're under stress, and I ran a catering business many, many years ago for about 2.5 years, 3 years, but actually couldn't cope with it because it was so stressful. I mean, you'd have all the events Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then 2 days to recover and you'd be back again. But what happens so often is that when you're there, you're having to respond to people, you're having to think quickly, you're rushing around, there's a lot of time pressures, and it's difficult. You're exhausted. The hours are very long, I mean, as we all know, and most of the time you're going beyond what you really should be doing. But you have to, because it's a job and it's work, you've got to get on with it. So having more energy, the ability to breathe properly, to help you get more energy. And also one little thing which I will give you now, which is really, really very useful, because when you get so stressed, it all becomes too much. You feel anxious. And often, I don't know if you've ever had this yourself, you just can't think clearly. You just get into this fuzz. You just get overwhelmed, and it's just all too much. And your body goes into a bit of a, it's really difficult. It's almost like having a stress attack. There is something you can do. Now, this is a breath practice that I wouldn't advocate as an everyday thing. This is something for in that moment where you think, I just can't do this, I can't cope, I'm about to burst into tears. If another person is rude to me or shouts at me or yells at me, that's it, I'm done. And this breath, it'll actually, if you remember when you were a child and you've been told off, which probably was all of us, and you know how you're recovering from that crying, or maybe you've fallen over or something, because that was the other time you'd be doing, and when you're crying, there's that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of motion, well, actually, it's quite interesting because our body is recovering by doing that. It's rebalancing. You've had a shock, you've had an upset, something's not right. And the body's adjusting to try and get you back into balance and calm you down. And what's happening is you're taking 2 or 3, we'd advocate 2 breaths in, quite big breaths, and then you're doing a long breath out. And what happens is when we're breathing in, our heart rate goes up because there's more pressure. As we breathe in, we get the air inside, it puts pressure on our heart rate goes up. And as we breathe out, and we breathe slowly, it's a and so the heart rate slows down. So a lovely long out breath is what slows the heart rate down and helps you get back into some kind of homeostasis, because it takes you out of the fight and flight mode. So the little breath, which, as I say, is not an everyday thing, it's only in that dangerous moment where you think, I'm going to lose it, then you can do this. And it is 2 breaths in through the nose. Really importantly, it's through the nose. So 2 but quite big breaths in. And if we can think about putting your hand on your tummy while you do it, if you're able to, think about breathing into your stomach. Diaphragmatic breathing, that's really quite key. I mean, if you're in that stressful moment, you may not, you might just not get that. But if you can, put your hand on your stomach. And so you do 2 breaths in and then out through your mouth.
Oh gosh, yeah, you relax.
A lovely, long, slow, relaxed breath. And that just takes your whole body, the physiology, in that second, you've changed your physiology. Your heart is just beating less. The brain knows what's happening. The brain says, okay, we can chill. It's okay. We're all right. We're safe. And that's what we're doing when we're recovering our body from being a child. It's the body saying, it's okay. It's all over. You're all right now. You're safe. And that's that instinct, that natural instinct to do a, isn't that amazing that we've got built in? It's incredible. But I didn't, for a long time, didn't know about it. And it's so useful because then you do the long breath out. And I'd suggest you do it 3 times, but no more. And the reason why I wouldn't advocate it as normal breathing is because as you're breathing out carbon dioxide. And we need carbon dioxide. And that's it's releasing it, because carbon dioxide is the thing that tells your body, I need to breathe. And so when you're breathing out and letting go, you're breathing it out. So that's why we need to have carbon dioxide. We need to monitor it. And that's part of the breathing process that I suggest. But this little exercise is really good. It's really helpful. Gets rid of that stress, and you can do it in an instant, and it just gets you back on track. And then you've got the clarity to think, right, what do I need to do next? So it's really powerful and really helpful. So I hope that is a useful tip.
Really clever, yeah.
Yeah. And it
makes sense. It makes sense as well. And you see children now who do that, and we do fit. Why have we forgotten that? And that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got everything in our body that we need, but as you say, we've just forgotten. We've been distracted with other things, and actually we've got everything in here. We just need to know how to access it.
Yeah, amazing. Which takes us on to what are your 5 top tips? We always ask every person who comes on our Showcase Sunday to give 5 top tips to anybody watching, what they can do whilst they're waiting to work with you. So have you got 5 top tips that you can help and support people with?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the first one I would say it's always important before anybody, and this is nothing, this is something that's never mentioned. When you start doing breath work of any kind, it is sensible to go and just check everything's all right with your heart, with your doctor, and just make sure the medical side is all good. Because lots of people who do breath work, I don't take people to extremes, I take them to the limits of their body in a comfortable place. So you're stretching the muscle but not causing any damage. So that's a really important thing. But often when you do other breath practices, everyone sits in the room and does the same. And somebody might, and that could be breath holding, and that could be actually quite detrimental. So it's really important to make sure you're fully healthy, that it's okay. Check with your doctor. There's no reason why you shouldn't be doing breath practices, because some of them are extreme and they don't come with a warning. And I, to my detriment, I was doing one, which is why I say don't breathe out through the mouth, which was 2 breaths in through the mouth and 1 breath out through the mouth, which takes all your oxygen and all your carbon dioxide out of your body, drops your heart rate down and your blood pressure down. And I almost fainted, and I was shivering cold for an hour, because your body, it's a shock, it's a total shock to your body. But this was a group with a teacher taking 20 people doing this. I mean, everyone had different reactions. It could be quite serious for somebody, if that happens. So first thing I'd say, just make sure you are okay and healthy before you do any breath practices. But the stuff I'm doing, I always make sure of that anyway on an individual basis. The second thing I would do, make sure everybody is breathing through their nose as much as possible, because when we breathe in the mouth, nothing happens to the air. It just gets a bit slightly warmed and a bit wet, but that's it. When you breathe through the nose, there are a minimum of 30 functions that the nose does, because we are designed to breathe through our nose. And the air goes in, it warms it, it cleans it, it sterilizes it, it puts it in the right pressure to hit your lungs. So it's the cleanest it could possibly be. And all the rubbish comes out with the cilia and the mucus and everything else. So the body's very clever and intelligent. But one other thing that it does, I mean, I won't give you the whole list now because we could be here all day, but one other thing that it does is it stimulates something called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is really important for our health and our cells. And it helps the absorption of oxygen in our cells. And that's stimulated in the little nasal passages, where, by the way, there are little tiny turbines that whiz around, which I didn't know about, which is quite fascinating. And that kind of helps condition the air and gets it at the right pressure for your lungs, the soft tissue in your lungs. And so this nitric acid is then absorbed into your body. And there are a lot of functions within the body that need nitric oxide. It's imperative to your health and well-being. So breathing through the nose is really key. So if everyone can start practicing that as soon as possible, that's a really good thing. There are times when you're talking, it's not so easy, other things, but that's quite a key one. The other thing is diaphragmatic breathing. Already mentioned it, but if a lot of us do shoulder breathing, upper chest breathing, what we want to be thinking about as much as possible. And again, put your hand on your tummy. Or the other thing is, just, I don't know if you can see, just to the side of your ribs, if I stand up here, because sometimes people start putting their hand on their tummy and they're never quite sure if they're breathing in or out, and it all gets very confusing. Whereas if you're putting your hands just on the bottom of your ribs here, as you breathe in, they sort of go out. And as you breathe out, they go in. And that's actually often an easier way of monitoring it, because it's a bit more simple. Otherwise, you're ending up doing it all the wrong way around. So thinking about when you're breathing, actually breathing in, and the thought process, where the thought goes, the energy goes. And if you're thinking about breathing into your tummy and being conscious of it, then that's much better. And that muscle is a really strong muscle. And believe it or not, that helps with your balance. So when we exercise the diaphragm muscle, we're actually helping with the whole balancing of the body. So it's really quite important. And it's, often you see so many people chest breathing, and it's actually all those other lovely extras that the body gives you. If you do it properly, you get all the benefits from those. So the third one would be actually something you could do if you're perhaps going for a sandwich at the shop I mentioned before, just something small, not overdoing it. And I wouldn't recommend anyone does it without checking with someone who does this sort of breath process first. But this is something you could do as an individual, just every so often. In fact, I'm going to tell you about sorry, jumping a little bit, but I'll tell you
Yeah.
about the Bolt score very quickly, because I'm sure we might be running out of time. The Bolt score is actually measuring your ability to tolerate CO2 in your body. The more CO2 you tolerate, the more oxygen you absorb into your body. The more oxygen you absorb, the healthier you are, the more energy you have. So if you just take a phone with the timer on, and just all I suggest you do is just be comfortable, just breathe normally, and then take a breath in, a breath out. I'll just demonstrate it for you, and then just hold your breath. So you're doing normal breathing, breath in, breath out, pinch your nose and hold your nose. And while you're holding it, just time how long you can hold your breath for. So just breathe in, breathe out, pinch your nose, hold your nose with your timer on, and just hold it. And you just want to hold it until you think, oh, I need to breathe. And we get that instinctive, that's a signal from our body, and that will be the CO2 telling your body you need to breathe. So then you just do that until you feel the urge to breathe. You don't push it. It's no competition. It's about you and where you're at, what your baseline is. And that will give you your indication of how much CO2 tolerant you are. So what was your score?
17 seconds.
Okay, we need to do a few more sessions.
Yeah.
And that's probably, most people would be around that age. That means you don't have a very good tolerance to CO2. And what we will do with this process is actually build that tolerance up very, very gently. So what you're looking for is 20 and above to be your baseline, really. So that's what you're aiming for. And most people, that would work for them. If you're a sports person, you do a lot of exercise and activity, you'd be looking for it to get a bit higher, because you need more energy. So you need to be able to absorb more carbon dioxide and oxygen to get that energy. So if you're looking at your Bolt score, let's say it's 17, what you can do, a very small thing, just say you're walking for your sandwich at lunchtime, you're walking along, and you can just say, right, I'm going to take a very small breath hold, and you just breathe in, breathe out. You don't have to pinch your nose as you're walking along the road, but if you can just hold your breath just for 5 seconds, and that's it. And do that 3 times, and then have a break, have a pause, take a few more steps. And when I say steps, each stride is counted as a step, and that's how I count it out. So I'll take a breath in, take a breath out, and just hold it for 3 steps. If I'm feeling brave, I might go up to 5 steps, but it depends how comfortable you feel. And just repeat that 3 or 4 times, and then have a pause, just wait, just carry on normally, and then repeat it and do it again, repeat it and do it again. So that's just breathe in, breathe out, pinch your nose, hold your breath just for 5 steps, and then release it. Have a few breaths in between until you feel comfortable. And again, it's not a competition. Just stay in your comfort zone, and then repeat that 3 or 4 times. And just what happens is you're very, very gently and very slowly building up your tolerance to CO2. And if you start doing that in a week's time, if you do your breath hold again, so breathe in, breathe out, pinch your nose, hold your nose, and time it, you'll probably find that your resistance is less, and you'll go up to 20. And you'll start being more comfortable holding CO2. But that's just a little exercise. I wouldn't go any further than that. So how many tips we've got?
Amazing.
I'm going to count at night. Right, this is quite a controversial one. A lot of people snore. They get woken up by themselves because they can't sleep, or they wake up in the morning, they have a dry mouth, they're really thirsty. So the chances are they're breathing through the mouth during the night. And they're very good signs to indicate that. And what people talk about is actually putting a bit of tape on your mouth. Now, that is very controversial, and not many people are comfortable with it. So you have to take your own view. And I would actually not do that without a little bit of research. And if anyone has any questions after this and wants to just throw me a few questions, that's absolutely fine. I can give them a little bit of information to let them know the process. You can buy from a company called Oxygen Advantage. They do things that go round your mouth, leave the mouth not covered, which some people feel more comfortable with, because there's a feeling of, you can't breathe sometimes. And actually just put that around the mouth, and that just gently holds the lips together, and will just prevent you from doing the jaw drop and mouth wide open, which isn't great because what's happening is you're breathing off all your CO2, you're not getting enough oxygen, and you don't wake up in the morning feeling great because you've got a bit of a dry mouth and you haven't had sleep. The other option is to put a little bit of tape across your mouth, which is what I do. I just do very thin tape across the middle, does the trick for me. And because I am a mouth breather at night, and I find I wake up in the morning, have better sleep, and actually not so mouth dry and everything else. And that will give you better quality of sleep. So I think because I could be here all day, with the other little one of the, that's 3 breaths I've given you. I don't want to overload everybody. And with the 2 other tips about diaphragm and the thing, there's my 5 tips.
That's amazing. That's been really helpful, because that'll help people who are struggling right now while they're waiting to work with you. But also it's really helpful because it's understanding of where they are. What if somebody was saying, actually, Susie, I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm struggling to breathe through my nose to do that, and that's why I'm breathing through my mouth more. How would they handle that?
Okay.
I'm just thinking, because at this time of year it can be a little bit like that, can't it?
Yeah, you get that nasal sort of blockage. I'd suggest if you have got a streaming cough, you blow the nose first before doing this, if there is anything there. Otherwise, it could be good end in tears. And what to actually clear all these passages here is something where you actually cause a bit of movement and put a bit of pressure on. And I'm going to look a bit silly now. This is what you do. Exactly what I said before about gentle breath in, gentle breath out, and pinch your nose and hold your nose up and down. And I'll show you how to do it, and then I'll explain why it works. So breathe in, breathe out. Pinch your nose and hold your nose. You look absolutely ridiculous when you do it. So you want to go into a quiet place so no one can see you. But what you're doing is you're pinching your nose, holding your nose, you've got your mouth closed. And as you're nodding up and down, first of all, because you're holding your nose, there's pressure building up in this area. It's stimulating the nitric oxide, which is really good. And by the way, that sterilizes all the air that comes into your body. So it's really, really important. And I have to throw this in, but masks and breathing through the mouths are really counterproductive because you stop breathing through the nose, and we need, for all sorts of viruses and everything else, breathe through the nose. That is your biggest natural protection. So important, and really help with health, especially through the winter when you get viruses and various things. Breathe through the nose, and that's sterilizing all the air that goes into that soft tissue of the lungs. You're doing it through the mouth, you're breathing all the rubbish, and we don't want to do that.
That's really helpful. That's really helpful.
It's so important, and such a small thing, yet we just don't know. So going back to the nasal breathing, if you do that 2 or 3 times, so the rocking motion is actually causing movement inside, and holding the nose is causing the pressure, and that will actually help those nasal passages. No, it's not gonna, for most people, it won't happen first time, second time. So you want to do 3 or 4, then maybe have a break, and then go back and do a few more minutes later. And if you've got 10 minutes and you're happy to do it, you could do it for a bit longer. But what you're finding, when you get that kind of clicking noise inside, where you actually think, oh, it's like a cracking noise. We think, oh, I can breathe, it's clearing. You kind of get that feeling. And be sort of, keep doing it, because sometimes it's not a magic thing. Some people it works right away, but some people it does take quite a few goes before they can start, especially if you've got a thick cold, that can take a little bit of a while. So that's a really helpful one for cleaning nasal passages.
That's amazing. Thank you. And you've got lots of examples, haven't you, with people you've worked with? I know I've got plenty of examples myself where I've had better sleep. I've been more relaxed before I've gone up on stage, for example. But how have you got, have you got any examples that you want to share, how you can help the industry, and how you can help the industry save time, as well as, how you add value to your clients and so on? Because that you've got a lot to share, and it makes a big difference. I know that because it's made a massive difference for me, and I can tell I've not been doing that practice for a while when I got that score.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it's easy to get But that's why if you're getting into it and really commit to it, it's great because it's something you can do on a daily basis, like the walking along and do your breath holds, and having to go to the corner and do things and take time out, too much time out of the day, because we're all busy, so it's not easy. And if we have to go and do a practice at night, get home, then it won't get done, will it? Because you get home and you're tired and you just fall into bed. Yes, in terms of impact, by actually readjusting our breath and breathing properly, just by simply getting back breathing as to how we were designed to breathe, how nature built us to breathe, we can actually massively increase energy in our body, well-being and health. Because of, we mentioned, like the nitric oxide, we're getting more oxygen absorbed into our body, which has a huge, massive impact on our health. Because if we're not breathing properly, we're not doing the right thing for the body. And with mitochondria, you see, at the moment, we're often in stress and we're running on, almost empty. And it's really tough. And the body's doing its very best to keep you alive. So extra things it doesn't have time for. So for example, let's say you were working really long hours and you're exhausted, and then you keep getting colds, you keep getting flus, you keep getting all these other illnesses, you get tummy bugs, all these other things. Well, that's often because the body is trying to keep you alive just by functioning, keeping your heart going, keeping your brain going. It doesn't have any capacity left to heal you. And that's why it is so important to breathe properly. Because by breathing properly, you get more oxygen. The oxygen is released into the cells, and the mitochondria that I mentioned before is the powerhouse of our bodies, has the ability to fix everything in the body and then say, right, what else needs sorting out? What else needs doing? And it can actually then build up your immunity and help you prevent being sick. So it's actually the whole process. I mean, I get really excited about it because having done breath work, which you get, different states and feel great for a couple of hours after, which is fantastic and relax. But then that's kind of it. Whereas this is every moment of the day, you can make adjustments and get your breathing back in balance. And the impact it has on you mentally and physically are huge, absolutely enormous. It's actually even life-changing for some people. You start recovering from illnesses that they just couldn't because their body was on the edge in fight and flight. And actually, it can't hardly function. But when you get that centered energy sorted out, you're breathing properly, then the body can actually start healing. And you get less days off work from sickness, which is a huge benefit for any business owner because you're getting more productivity from your staff and they're not taking as many work days off. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, the stats of 22-23 is 35.2 million work days were lost due to work-related illness. And over 50% of that was to do with stress and anxiety in the workplace. So it's huge, it's massive impact. And by simply learning how to breathe and how we were born to breathe, readjusting it, then we can actually change all that. And then we get the benefit for not only the individual, because you'll have more energy. And I must just say something about energy, by the way. You have more energy, you'll feel better, you'll be able to cope with things because you're changing your physiology. So often people say, let's deal with stress management. Now write a list, eat better, go and do your meditation. And that's all fantastic. But when you're stressed out, you've got no capacity. I mean, you think, oh, but do another thing, it's all going to be too much. But if you can change your physiology and benefit your physiology and get that clarity, you can start thinking about dealing with things in a different way. So it has all really interesting ways for it to work. Just going very quickly back on the energy, I do actually work with quite a few sports people. And one thing, in fact, my daughter is a really good example because she's just done medicine and sports science at uni, actually just got her degree. And so she's very, very into all this stuff. And part of her lifestyle is about doing exercise, and she climbs, hangs off walls and things like that. That's her main thing. But she actually does running as well, just to keep her training going. And she was running and actually had quite some significant issues because she was going out, particularly in the winter months, running and breathing, but she was breathing through her mouth. We had all sorts of visits to the doctor because she had breath issues, really struggled, getting pain in her chest. They wanted to put her on a ventilator. They couldn't see anything with an x-ray, but they wanted to put her on a ventilator, the breathing thing, the puffer. She did have one go and it passed out, and I just said, just let's tackle it another way. I don't think it's the right thing. So what we've worked out through doing this breath work, because this was a few years ago, is I didn't think she was ready for practicing it, and she wasn't interested actually, because as a child, she's only just 22, so she's just really interested in these other things now. So what we did is we actually did some practice on learning how to breathe. So we did the breath holds, so she built up her tolerance so she could hold her breath a lot longer. And what happened was, the other day she did a 5K at her best speed, and she ran the whole way with her mouth closed, breathing through her nose.
Wow.
And why that's beneficial is when you do any movement and exercise, we release lactic acid. And particularly for sports people, they have a level that they get to where they can, they measure it through oxygen with exercise, VOX, to see what your capacity is. And then people do a lot of exercise to see if you can bring up your stamina to do it further. But if you learn to breathe properly with your mouth closed, and it doesn't happen overnight, you've got to practice it, you can increase your energy levels up to 20%.
Wow.
Huge. And when you're dealing with people who are long, runners, like marathon runners, who in fact one of my new clients is, that is massive. That is a number one win for that person. They're in the process of doing it now, and they're already getting results. But it means your lactic acid resilience is better. Your body's made adaptations so it can actually tolerate more lactic acid, so you have got more energy. And often you'll see at the end, you see a marathon, you see people there and their legs buckle and fall under. That's because they're struggling. They're not breathing through the mouth. They're absolutely not breathing. You know the people who aren't. Their body is desperate to keep going, to keep the heart going, keep the brain going. So it draws all the blood from the body up to the top of the body, which is why their legs just go wobbly and they can't stand up. But when you learn how to control your breathing and breathe to the optimum, then your body's completely balanced. It builds up your energy. You've got a lot more in there to work with. And that's fantastic for business owners, because they'll get more mileage out of their employees. Probably shouldn't say
and
that.
Themselves.
Exactly. And the people who work for them will be a lot healthier, and so it's a win-win for whoever runs the company and for the people who work there. So the advantages are absolutely massive. So I hope I haven't just poured too much out, but I am so enthusiastic about it.
There's a lot of science behind it, and it's science backed, and it is quite fascinating and then because you've got athletes who are going through this and getting their personal best, it just makes sense. And you could, because if you're running at full speed ahead all the time in your business because you're short staffed, that would be really beneficial.
Absolutely.
And so if someone was sitting on the fence right now saying, oh, I don't know whether this is for me, because the big thing that I always say, and I say it for businesses all the time, is consistency is key. If you're not consistent, that's where everything falls down. But if someone was sitting on the fence right now thinking about, should I get Susie involved? Should I bring her in? What would your past and present clients say about what you do? What would they say? What would they say to future clients?
Well, I think, first of all, you interviewing me and talking to me is a really good sign.
Yeah.
Because you were so bowled over with it that you thought it was really worth talking about.
Yeah.
I think to look at your business. I mean, how many days are people going off sick? What's the productivity like? And by giving people just those extra tools, which can be very simple. I mean, I've covered a lot of, if you like, the sciencey bit today, but actually the process is really simple and it's really easy. You don't have to go into the science, but you can just do the practices and just trust that they are going to work, because here's the science. And actually it is really straightforward. So I hope I haven't put anybody off making it sound complicated, because it's not at all. It's just what you do every day, but doing it slightly differently. But the benefits are huge. For an individual, the benefits on your health and well-being, better sleep, are massive. And I think that's something we all need. We all need to really be looking after ourselves at the moment. The pressure's on with the environment, with everything, the crazy world that we're all living in. And we need to keep centered, keep calm, and just keep as healthy as possible. And I think that's really quite important. For the business owner, I think the difference it makes to productivity and the keeping people are well and are better, so they're not taking so many days off work. They function better, they have more clarity, more productive. And it kind of has been what I've seen in some companies. It's almost a bit of a community thing, because people are coming in and they're saying, what's your boss score? And you're getting really competitive, and they're talking about, well, mine's actually up to this now. So it becomes, people are talking about it, and then asking each other questions and saying, well, I did that, oh, how'd you clear your nose again? And oh, okay. And it's been quite a lovely community thing, because it becomes a thing everybody talks about, shares the thoughts and ideas and their experience. So it brings a bit of team stuff together as well, which is really quite nice. So those things, the impact on the business, the impact on the health and well-being on the individual, and actually bringing the team together. Because what I will do often, if it's a group, is a half day or a day workshop, if they can take that time, or in little small groups. And then I can take into individuals, but also give the whole group. And that seems to work really well.
And I think if you're really pressured because you've got a lot on, and I know that this is what happened to me, I had so much on, and I'm big on taking time out for me. To de-stress is also a real high benefit. So if you've got a stressed workforce, this will help and support. This is what it did for me. I'm just, sharing my experience. And I think if you've got a stressed workforce, or you've got a lot of pressure on, it actually gives you that space to focus better, and be able to relax more, and you're more productive. I felt I was more productive, and it helped me to focus more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably that is the thing I should have led with, because I think you're absolutely right. That's the whole corporate stress management. It's the whole reason behind it, is to help with the stress, for people to stay calm and cope, and be able to deal with it. Because otherwise you just get burnout, and it's all too much.
And you don't want to be that owner who gets burned out, or the owner of, or the business manager who is dealing with staff who are on burnout. That's not okay. So it's really, really definitely worth having that conversation with Susie, to see how she can package up together whatever. I mean, you probably do a health check of what needs to be done in the corporate environment, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a solopreneur, whatever it is. Susie will be able to help and support you. So how do people get in touch with you, Susie? What is the best way? Is it your email address? Is it your website?
Yes,
or what's the best way?
Yes, we're just redoing our website at the moment, which will be available in the next few days. Actually, no, it should be ready, in fact. And the website is www.thebreathcode.co.uk. And I can be contacted at Susie, SUSIE, thebreathcode.co.uk.
Brilliant. So it's Susie at thebreathcode.co.uk, is it?
Yeah.
Brilliant. We'll put all the links for Susie onto the end of the Showcase Sunday, so that you can get in contact with Susie and actually live a healthier, better life, and stress-free, relaxed life moving forward. And you could change your culture in your organisation with Susie's help and support, to be able to do that, to make sure that everybody is more healthier, happier, and that will make you wealthier in the long run. So thank you so much, Susie, for joining us on the Showcase Sunday. That's been really informative. Lots to think about, lots of exercises to do, which has been incredible. Thank you so much for joining us, and may I wish you a happy Sunday. Happy Sunday, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed being here. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Great.